The apartment smelled like 3-day-old coffee and unwashed laundry. Marcus Chun sat on the edge of his mattress, the only piece of furniture left in the bedroom, staring at the eviction notice taped to his front door. 30 days. He had 30 days to figure out where a 42-year-old unemployed widower with a foreclosed house and maxed-out credit cards was supposed to go. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd once managed a portfolio worth $12 million, made decisions that affected hundreds of employees, wore suits that cost more than this month's rent. Now he couldn't afford to keep the lights on. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. His phone buzzed. Another message from his ex-wife Linda's lawyer. He didn't open it. He knew what it said. Something about the remaining assets, the division of what little was left after everything had been liquidated to pay for Ethan's medical bills. Ethan, 6 years old. Leukemia had taken him on a Tuesday morning in March, with pale spring sunlight streaming through the hospital window and Linda holding one small hand while Marcus held the other. That was 18 months ago, and Marcus still couldn't walk past a playground without his chest tightening so hard he thought his ribs would crack. The job had gone first. 3 months after the funeral, his boss, Jim, who'd sent flowers and a card that said, "Thinking of you," had called him into the corner office with the view of downtown Seattle. "You're not present, Marcus. Your numbers are down. Clients are complaining. I know you're going through something, but we have to think about the firm." As if grief had an expiration date. As if you could schedule mourning between quarterly reports. Marcus had cleaned out his desk on a Friday afternoon while his former colleagues avoided eye contact and pretended to be very busy with their keyboards. Linda had lasted longer. She tried he'd give her that. But grief had carved them into different shapes, incompatible pieces that no longer fit together. She'd wanted to talk about Ethan, to keep his memory alive with photo albums and visits to his grave. Marcus had wanted to forget, to drink enough whiskey that the image of his son's last breath would finally blur into something bearable. She joined a support group. He joined a bar. By month 7, she'd moved into her sister's place. By month 10, the divorce papers arrived. "I can't save you if you won't save yourself," she'd written in a note tucked into the legal documents. "I loved you. I still love the man you were. But I can't watch you disappear." Now Marcus existed in a kind of limbo, a ghost haunting his own life. He'd applied to 43 jobs in the past 6 months. 0 interviews. His resume had a gap that screamed, damaged goods. His references from the firm were lukewarm at best. And every time he tried to write a cover letter, he'd stare at the screen and think, what's the point? What's the point of any of this without Ethan? The box had arrived that morning, forwarded from his old address. No return label, just his name in his mother's careful handwriting. His mother, who died 4 years ago from a stroke that took her quickly, mercifully. His father, who'd passed away when Marcus was 23, 2 decades gone now. A stern man who'd worked construction and rarely smiled and never quite knew how to tell his only son that he was proud of him. Marcus had opened the box expecting old tax documents or forgotten bank statements. His mother had been a meticulous keeper of records. Instead, he'd found letters. Dozens of them, bound with twine, yellowed at the edges. And on top, a newer envelope, his mother's handwriting again. "Marcus, your father wanted you to have these. I was supposed to give them to you when you became a father yourself. I'm sorry I waited so long. I was scared of what they might mean. But I think you need them now. Love, Mom." Marcus picked up the top letter from the pile on his mattress. His father's handwriting, blocky and uncertain, like someone who'd learned to write late and never quite gotten comfortable with it. The date, March 15th, 1997, 6 months before Marcus graduated college. He unfolded the thin paper, and his father's voice, a voice he'd almost forgotten, came flooding back. "Marcus, I don't know how to say this to your face, so I'm writing it down. I'm proud of you, son. I know I never said it enough. I know I was hard on you. My father was hard on me and his father was hard on him, and I thought that's how you made a man strong. But watching you at your college, seeing you give that presentation about economics and business theory, hell, Half of it went over my head. I realized you're already stronger than I ever was. Not because I pushed you, because you pushed yourself. Because you're smart and kind and you're going to do things I could never imagine. I'm writing this because I need you to know. If I die tomorrow, I died proud of who you became. Love, Dad. Marcus's hands trembled. He put the letter down, picked up another. Then another. 37 letters in total. Each one dated. Each one a small window into the inner life of a man who'd never learned to speak his feelings aloud. Letters written after Marcus's high school graduation, after his first job, after he'd introduced Linda to his parents, after the wedding. His father had documented every milestone, every moment of pride, every flash of love, and never sent a single one. There was one dated the day Ethan was born. Marcus had to stop reading halfway through, his vision blurring. I held my grandson today, his father had written. He has your eyes, Marcus. And when you looked at him, I saw the same terror I felt the day you were born. The fear that you won't be good enough, that you'll fail him somehow. Let me tell you what I learned too late. You're already enough. The fact that you're scared means you care. That's all any kid really needs. Someone who cares enough to be terrified of screwing up. Marcus sat in the silence of his apartment, surrounded by the ghosts of 3 generations of men who'd loved clumsily, who'd carried their emotions like heavy stones, who'd died with words unsaid. And something inside him, something that had been frozen solid since that Tuesday morning in March, began to crack. He read every letter. It took him 4 hours, stopping frequently to breathe through the grief that came in waves. His father had written about his own childhood, about growing up poor in rural Oregon, about his father's alcoholism and violence, about breaking that cycle and swearing his own son would never feel the back of a hand. He'd written about the first time Marcus had said, "I love you," age 7, unprompted, before bed, and how it had made him cry in the garage afterward because his own father had never said those words once in his entire life. The last letter was dated 3 days before his father's heart attack. Marcus, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I hope I got to meet your children. I hope I got to be the grandfather I should have been. But if I didn't, I need you to know this. Losing me will hurt. Maybe it already does. But don't let the hurt make you hard. Don't let it make you distant. Feel it. Let it break you if it has to. Then get back up. Not for me. For whoever needs you. There's always someone who needs you, son. Even when you think there isn't. Promise me you'll look for them. Promise me you won't disappear. Love forever, Dad. Marcus folded the letter carefully and sat in the near darkness of his apartment. Outside, Seattle traffic hummed. Somewhere in the building, a baby was crying. Life continuing, indifferent to his pain, relentless as a river. He thought about the last 18 months, about the man he'd become, bitter, isolated, half alive. He thought about Ethan's last words, "Don't be sad, Daddy. I'll be okay." How his 6-year-old son had comforted him in the end. How the roles had reversed. How even dying, Ethan had been braver than Marcus had ever been. He picked up his phone, scrolled through his contacts until he found a name he hadn't called in months. David Park, old college roommate, now a social worker in Tacoma. They'd met for coffee 4 months after Ethan died, and Marcus had been too raw, too angry, had snapped at David's well-meaning questions and left mid-conversation. David had texted afterward, "Whenever you're ready, I'm here." Marcus dialed before he could talk himself out of it. "Marcus." David's voice was cautious, surprised. "Hey man, are you okay?" "No," Marcus said. And then, for the first time since the funeral, "I'm not okay, and I need help." The silence on the other end lasted 3 seconds. Then, "Where are you?" "I'm coming over." David arrived an hour later with Thai food and the kind of patient, quiet presence Marcus had forgotten existed. They sat on the floor of the empty living room. Marcus had sold the couch and David listened while Marcus talked. About Ethan. About Linda. About the job. The eviction. The crushing weight of waking up every morning and remembering his son was dead. About the letters. About the promise his father had asked him to make. "There's always someone who needs you," Marcus repeated, his voice hoarse. But I don't know how to find them. I can barely take care of myself. David was quiet for a long moment, picking at his pad thai. Then he said, I volunteer at a youth center in Tacoma. Kids in foster care, kids from rough backgrounds. A lot of them have lost parents, siblings. They're angry and scared and they don't trust anyone. He looked at Marcus. You could come. Just once. See if it feels like something you could do. I'm not qualified to help anyone, Marcus said. I'm a mess. So are they, David replied. Maybe that's the point. Maybe they don't need someone who has all the answers. Maybe they need someone who knows what it's like to fall apart. Marcus went the following Wednesday. The Tacoma Youth Center was a converted warehouse in an industrial neighborhood. Bright murals covering the brick exterior. Inside, it smelled like gym socks and pizza, echoing with the sounds of teenagers playing basketball and arguing over video games. David introduced him to the director, Maria, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a handshake that could crack walnuts. We need volunteers for our mentorship program, she explained, leading him through the facility. One-on-one time with kids who need stable adult presence. Nothing formal, just showing up, being consistent, listening. She paused outside a room where a boy, maybe 13, sat alone at a table doing homework. That's Tyler. He's been with us for 6 months. Lost his mom to an overdose last year. Foster placement fell through. He's smart as hell, but he's given up. Won't talk to anyone. Marcus watched the boy through the window, saw the set of his shoulders, the way he hunched over his math textbook like he was trying to disappear. Recognition hit him like a punch to the gut. That's what I look like, he thought. That's exactly what I look like. Can I meet him? Marcus asked. Tyler didn't look up when Marcus sat down across from him. I don't need a mentor, the boy said flatly. They keep sending people. They all leave. I'm not here to save you, Marcus said. I'm here because I need somewhere to be on Wednesday afternoons. That got Tyler's attention. He glanced up, suspicious. What? My son died, Marcus said, and the words, spoken aloud to this hostile stranger, felt both terrifying and liberating. I lost my job. My wife left. I'm about to be evicted. I'm here because someone told me there's always someone who needs you. I don't know if that's true, but I'm willing to find out. Tyler stared at him for a long moment. Then he said, Your son. How old? 6. Leukemia. The boy's expression shifted, something raw flickering across his face. My mom was 34. Fentanyl. He looked back down at his math book. Everyone says it gets easier. Does it? No, Marcus said honestly. It gets different. You learn to carry it better. Some days are worse than others. But it never goes away. Good, Tyler said. I don't want it to go away. If I forget her, it's like she was never real. Yeah, Marcus whispered. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. They sat together in silence, 2 people drowning in grief, and somehow it felt less lonely than any moment Marcus had experienced in 18 months. He came back the next Wednesday, and the next. At first, it was just sitting with Tyler, helping with homework, listening to him talk about his mom, the good parts, not just the addiction. Tyler showed him photos on his phone. His mom at the beach, laughing. His mom making his birthday cake. His mom teaching him to ride a bike. Marcus showed Tyler pictures of Ethan. First day of kindergarten, Halloween costume, building sandcastles. They traded stories like currency, each memory a small act of defiance against forgetting. By the 3rd month, other kids started joining them. Jasmine, 15, whose father was in prison and whose mother had abandoned her. Carlos, 12, who'd witnessed his older brother's murder and hadn't spoken for a year until Marcus sat with him in patient silence and Carlos finally whispered, Do you think dead people can see us? Marcus had answered honestly, I don't know, but I talk to my son anyway, just in case. Maria pulled Marcus aside after 6 months. You're good at this, she said. These kids trust you. Have you thought about making it official? We have an opening for a youth counselor position. It doesn't pay much. I'll take it, Marcus interrupted. Whatever it is, I'll take it. The job paid $38,000 a year, barely enough to cover rent in a cheaper apartment in Tacoma. Marcus didn't care. He showed up every morning, worked with kids who carried trauma like backpacks, learned to recognize the signs of depression and anxiety and PTSD. He completed his certification in grief counseling. He started a weekly support group for kids who'd lost parents. He called it the holding room, a safe space to hold the weight of loss together. Tyler graduated high school and got accepted to community college on a full scholarship. At his graduation party at the center, he pulled Marcus aside and said, "You know you saved my life, right?" "You saved mine first," Marcus replied. Linda reached out a year and a half after Marcus started at the center. She'd heard from David about what he was doing. They met for coffee, the first time they'd seen each other since signing the divorce papers. She looked different, lighter somehow, like she'd put down something heavy. "I'm glad you found this," she said, stirring her latte. "I was scared you'd—" She didn't finish the sentence. "So was I," Marcus admitted. "Every day for months, I thought about it. Ending it. Joining Ethan." He paused. "My dad saved me. This letter he wrote before he died. It reminded me that pain doesn't have to make you smaller. It can make you bigger if you let it." "Can I see it?" Linda asked. The letter. He'd been carrying it in his wallet, folded into a small square. He handed it to her, watched her eyes move across his father's blocky handwriting. When she finished, she was crying quietly. "He was right," she said, "about there always being someone who needs you." She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry I couldn't be the person you needed. I'm sorry we couldn't save each other. We were too broken in the same place," Marcus said. "We couldn't heal each other. We just kept tearing open the same wound. But you found a way to heal anyway," she said. "I'm proud of you." They weren't going to get back together. Too much damage, too many scars. But they could be friends, eventually. They could talk about Ethan without one of them fleeing the conversation. They could visit his grave together on his birthday and remember the boy who'd loved dinosaurs and superhero movies and who'd made them parents for 6 beautiful, terrifying years. 3 years after finding his father's letters, Marcus stood in front of a room full of city officials, presenting his proposal for a citywide youth grief counseling program. The Tacoma Youth Center had become a model for trauma-informed care. Other cities wanted to replicate it. Marcus, who'd once managed millions in corporate investments, now pitched funding for something that would never appear on a quarterly earnings report. "These kids aren't broken," he told the council. "They're carrying weight no one should have to carry alone. We can't take away their pain, but we can show them they don't have to disappear into it. We can give them permission to fall apart, and then we can help them find reasons to get back up." The program was approved. 6 facilities across Washington state. Marcus was named director of the initiative. He hired Tyler as a junior counselor. He brought on Jasmine to lead art therapy sessions. He built a team of people who understood that sometimes the only qualification you need is having survived what felt unsurvivable. On Ethan's birthday, Marcus visited the grave with flowers and a letter of his own, a tradition he'd started after reading his father's letters. He wrote about the kids he'd helped, about the lives that had been changed, about the legacy of love that Ethan had left behind even in 6 short years. "You made me a father," he wrote, "and when you left I thought that was over. I thought I'd failed at the only thing that mattered. But Dad's letters reminded me, being a father isn't just biology. It's showing up. It's caring enough to be terrified. It's promising to look for the people who need you. I found them, buddy. I found so many of them. And every time I help one of these kids, I think of you. I think of how brave you were at the end. How you told me not to be sad. You were teaching me even then. Teaching me that love doesn't end with death. Transforms. Finds new shapes, new homes. I love you. I miss you. And I promise I won't disappear. Not anymore." He left the letter at the headstone, weighted down with a smooth river stone. Nearby, a playground hummed with children's laughter. Marcus didn't flinch anymore when he heard it. He'd learned to let joy and grief exist in the same moment. 2 truths holding hands. His phone buzzed. A text from Carlos. "Bad day. Can we talk?" Marcus smiled. On my way, he typed back. There was always someone who needed him. His father had been right about that. And in helping them carry their weight, Marcus had learned to carry his own. Not easily, not painlessly, but with purpose, with meaning, with the knowledge that even in the darkest grief, there was still light if you were brave enough to look for it. He drove across Tacoma as the sun set, the city painted in gold and shadow. Somewhere, his father's words lived on in the letter Marcus now carried. Somewhere, Ethan's spirit existed in every child Marcus helped save. Somewhere, 3 generations of men who'd loved imperfectly had finally learned to say the words that mattered. I see you. I'm proud. I love you. Don't disappear. And Marcus Chen, 45 years old, grief counselor, survivor of the unsurvivable, didn't plan to disappear at all. He had work to do. He had kids who needed him. He had a life that, against all odds, had found meaning again in the wreckage of loss. That was enough. Some days it was more than enough. It was everything. 5 years after Marcus founded the Grief Counseling Initiative, the program had expanded to 23 centers across 3 states. What had started as one broken man sitting with one angry teenager in a converted warehouse had become a movement. A recognition that grief wasn't something to be fixed or medicated away, but something to be held, honored, witnessed. Marcus's approach, born from his father's letters and his own desperate need for purpose, had struck a chord. These weren't sterile therapy sessions with clinical language and diagnostic codes. These were human beings sitting in rooms together, saying out loud the things that were destroying them from the inside. Marcus had learned that the most powerful thing you could tell someone drowning in loss was, "Me too. I know. You're not alone." No platitudes, no timelines, just presence, just truth. The Seattle Times had run a feature on him 6 months ago. The headline, From Corporate Executive to Youth Advocate, How One Father's Tragedy Sparked a Revolution in Grief Care. Marcus had hated the word revolution, felt too grand, too heroic. He was just a man who'd found the only way to survive, by helping others survive too. But the article had brought attention, funding, donations. The board of directors had pushed him to expand faster. Strike while the iron's hot, they said. Capitalize on the momentum. But Marcus had resisted. Growth, he'd learned, had to be intentional. Each new center needed trained counselors who understood trauma. Each program needed time to embed itself in the community. Rushing meant compromising quality, and these kids deserved better than a franchise model of grief support. Tyler, now 21 and a full-time counselor at the original Tacoma Center, sat across from Marcus in his office. A modest space with second-hand furniture and walls covered in drawings from the kids. Tyler had grown into himself, filled out, lost the haunted look that had defined him at 13. He was good at his job, maybe better than Marcus. The kids responded to him because he didn't pretend to have overcome his grief. He still talked about his mom in present tense sometimes. He still had bad days. But he'd learned to function alongside the loss, to build a life that included the scar tissue. We got another call from Portland, Tyler said, reviewing notes on his tablet. That's the 4th inquiry this month. They want to know if we can help them set up a program. What did you tell them? Same thing I always tell them, we can provide consultation, training materials, but they need to find their own Marcus Chin. Someone local who's lived it. Tyler looked up. But that's getting harder to explain. They see you on TV, they read the articles, they think you're some kind of guru. They want you specifically. Marcus rubbed his temples. The attention had become its own burden. People wanted him to write a book, give TED Talks, appear on podcasts. They wanted the story neatly packaged with a bow. Tragedy, despair, redemption, triumph. They wanted the Hollywood version where pain transformed smoothly into purpose without mentioning the nights Marcus still woke up crying, or the days when missing Ethan was so acute he could barely breathe. I'm not special, Marcus said. I just showed up. Anyone can show up. That's the point, Tyler countered. You did show up. Most people don't. Most people run from their pain or numb it or pretend it's not there. You leaned into it. You let it change you. That's rare, Marcus. whether you want to admit it or not. Before Marcus could respond, Jasmine appeared in the doorway. 20 now, studying psychology at University of Washington while working part-time at the center. She'd shaved her head and gotten a tattoo of her mother's signature on her forearm. "We've got a situation," she said, her voice tight. "New kid just arrived. 11 years old. Both parents died in a car accident last week. She's not talking, not eating. Foster mom's overwhelmed." Marcus stood immediately. This was the work that mattered. Not the press, not the expansion, but the moment when a child's world had ended and they needed someone to sit in the rubble with them. "Where is she?" "Quiet room. I tried sitting with her, but she's completely shut down." The quiet room was exactly that. A small space with soft lighting, comfortable floor cushions, weighted blankets, a shelf of books and stuffed animals. The girl sat in the corner, knees pulled to her chest, staring at nothing. She had dark hair in braids and a frozen backpack clutched in her arms. Marcus recognized the look in her eyes. He'd seen it in the mirror 18 months after Ethan died. The look of someone who'd gone somewhere else entirely because reality had become unbearable. He sat down across from her, not too close, leaving space. He didn't say anything for a long time, just breathed, just existed in the same room with her pain. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "They said it didn't hurt. They said it was fast. They said my parents didn't feel anything. Do you believe them?" Marcus asked gently. "No." Her hands tightened on the backpack. "I think they felt scared. I think they thought about me. I think they didn't want to leave me." "You're probably right," Marcus said. "And you know what else? I think wherever they are now, they're still thinking about you, still loving you. Death doesn't stop that." The girl looked at him for the first time. Her eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. "My name is Zoe." "Hi, Zoe. I'm Marcus. My son died 5 years ago. His name was Ethan. He was 6. Does it stop hurting?" Marcus remembered Tyler asking the same question. He gave the same answer. "No. It changes. Some days are better. But it never goes away completely. And that's okay. That's how you know the love was real." Zoe started crying then. Not the quiet tears she'd probably been holding back, but deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. Marcus moved closer, let her lean against him, held her while she fell apart. Jasmine appeared in the doorway, saw what was happening, and quietly closed the door to give them privacy. This was the work. This was why Marcus got up every morning. Not for the recognition or the grants or the board meetings. For this, for the moment when a child realized they didn't have to be strong, didn't have to hold it together, didn't have to pretend they were okay when their entire world had shattered. That evening, Marcus drove to Linda's apartment in Bellevue. They'd maintained their friendship over the years, had dinner once a month, texted on Ethan's birthday and death anniversary. She'd remarried a year ago. A software engineer named Paul who was kind and patient and didn't try to replace what she'd lost. Marcus liked him. Linda deserved happiness. She opened the door with flour on her cheek and a smile. "You're early. I'm making lasagna, Ethan's favorite recipe." They'd started this tradition 3 years ago. On Ethan's death anniversary, they'd cook his favorite meal together and talk about him. Not the sad parts, not the hospital, but the joy. The funny things he'd said, the games he'd invented, the way he'd insisted on wearing his Superman cape to the grocery store. "New girl at the center today," Marcus said, settling at the kitchen table while Linda rolled out pasta dough. 11. Just lost both parents. Completely traumatized. "How'd you reach her?" "Told her the truth. That it doesn't get better. That she doesn't have to be okay." Linda paused, looking at him thoughtfully. "You know, when we were married, I used to wish you'd talk like that. Just say out loud what you were feeling instead of bottling it up. It's strange. You found your voice by helping other people find theirs." "I couldn't talk to you," Marcus admitted. "It hurt too much. Everywhere I looked, I saw you hurting too, and I felt responsible. Like I should be able to fix it for both of us. And when I couldn't, I just shut down." "I know. I did the same thing, just differently. I talked so much I never listened. I wanted to remember everything about Ethan, document every moment. because I was terrified of forgetting. But I never asked what you needed. We were both drowning right next to each other and couldn't figure out how to share the same life raft. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, the rhythm of cooking a meditation. Paul came home from work, joined them, shared stories from his day. This was healing too, the ability to exist in normal moments without Ethan's absence destroying everything. Grief had taught Marcus that love didn't require constant mourning. It required remembering, honoring, and then choosing to live. Over dinner, Linda said, "I saw the Times article. You look tired in the photo." "I am tired. Good tired, mostly. But tired." "The board's pushing you to expand again, aren't they?" "How'd you know?" "Because I know how boards work. They see success and they want to scale it. But Marcus, you can't save everyone. You can't fix every broken kid. You'll burn yourself out." "I know," he said quietly. "But every time I think about slowing down, I remember Tyler, or Zoe, or Carlos. I remember what it felt like to be that broken, and how David showed up for me when I needed it. How can I say no to that?" Paul spoke up, his voice measured. "You helped them by being human with them, by being imperfect and still showing up. If you burn out, if you become just another administrator running a nonprofit, you lose what made this work in the first place. Your superpower isn't scale, it's presence. You can't be present for everyone." The words hit harder than Marcus expected. Paul was right. He'd been so focused on expanding the reach of the program that he'd started to lose touch with the heart of it. The one-on-one moments, the sitting in silence, the permission to fall apart. That night, lying in his own apartment, a modest two-bedroom in Tacoma with photos of Ethan on every wall and his father's letters framed on his desk, Marcus made a decision. He'd stop chasing growth. He'd focus on depth. He'd train more counselors, share the model, consult with other cities, but he wouldn't stretch himself so thin that he became useless to the kids who needed him most. He pulled out his journal, another tradition he'd started after reading his father's letters. His dad could document his love in words he never spoke. Marcus could do the same. He wrote to Ethan, "Hey buddy, met a girl today who reminded me of you. Not because she looked like you, but because she had that same bravery you showed at the end. The willingness to feel everything, even when it hurts. I told her about you. I told her how you taught me not to be sad. How you were 6 years old and braver than any adult I've known. I think she heard me. I think it helped. I hope wherever you are, you know that your life meant something. That losing you nearly destroyed me, but surviving it made me into someone who could help other kids survive too. You made me a better father even now, even 5 years later. I love you. I miss you. And I promise I'll keep showing up. Dad." The next morning, Marcus called an all-staff meeting at the Tacoma Center. 20 people crammed into the conference room. Counselors, administrative staff, volunteers. He stood at the front, no presentation slides, no formal agenda. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began, "about what we're building here, about why it works. And I've realized we're at a crossroads. We can keep expanding, open more centers, serve more kids. Or we can double down on quality. Train other people to do this work well. Support programs in other cities without trying to control them. Be a resource instead of a brand." Tyler raised his hand. "What brought this on? Honestly, I'm tired. And I'm scared I'm going to lose sight of why we started this. I didn't start the program to build an empire. I started it because I was broken, and sitting with other broken people was the only thing that made me feel less alone." He paused. "I want us to focus on doing fewer things better. Deeper relationships with the kids we serve. More training for counselors. More time for self-care and burnout prevention. I want us to be sustainable, not just successful." The room was silent. Then Maria, the director who'd first hired Marcus as a volunteer, started clapping. Others joined. Tyler stood up. "That's the most honest thing I've heard in a board meeting ever. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel." "This isn't a board meeting," Marcus said with a slight smile. "The board's going to hate this decision. But this is what's right for us. For the kids. For the work. Over the following months, Marcus restructured the organization. He created an open-source training curriculum that other cities could adapt. He started a consulting practice where he and his team would help establish programs elsewhere without directly managing them. He cut his own salary and redistributed funds to hire more counselors. He reduced his speaking engagements and media appearances, focusing instead on being present at the center 3 days a week. The board pushed back, of course. 3 members resigned. One philanthropist withdrew a major donation. The press coverage shifted from glowing profiles to critical questions about whether Marcus was wasting potential or afraid of success. But Marcus didn't care. He'd lost everything once. His son, his marriage, his career, his home. He knew the difference between what mattered and what just looked impressive from the outside. Zoe, the 11-year-old who'd lost her parents, became a regular at the center. She still had bad days, still cried in the quiet room, still struggled with the unfairness of her situation. But slowly, incrementally, she started engaging. She joined the art therapy group. She made friends with other kids who'd experienced loss. She started talking about her parents without completely falling apart. 6 months after their first meeting, she brought Marcus a drawing. It showed 2 figures in the clouds, her parents, and a small girl on the ground looking up. Between them, a bridge made of light. "I dreamed this," she explained, "that they're not really gone. They're just somewhere I can't see yet. And the light is all the love they left behind. Connects us." Marcus's eyes stung. "That's beautiful, Zoe. Can I keep this?" "Yeah, because you taught me something important. You taught me it's okay to be sad and happy at the same time. To miss them and still have fun with my friends. To remember them and still make new memories." "You taught me that too," Marcus said softly. "My son taught me, and now you're teaching other kids. That's how it works. We pass it forward." On the 7-year anniversary of Ethan's death, Marcus hosted a gathering at the center. Not a memorial, but a celebration. Kids from the program, their families, volunteers, staff. They shared food, told stories, released biodegradable balloons with messages written for lost loved ones. Tyler spoke about his mom. Carlos shared a poem he'd written about his brother. Jasmine performed a song she'd composed about healing. And Marcus, standing in front of everyone, holding a letter he'd written that morning, said, "My father taught me that love doesn't die when people do. Transforms. Finds new homes. And my son taught me that even in the darkest grief, there's still a reason to keep going, because there's always someone who needs you. This center exists because of them, because of everyone we've lost. Their names are written in every success story, every kid who learns they don't have to disappear into their pain. So tonight, we're not just celebrating the people we've lost. We're celebrating the lives they're still changing, the legacy of love that outlasts death." Zoe stood beside him, holding his hand. Tyler on the other side. Jasmine and Carlos nearby. A community built from broken pieces, held together by shared grief and stubborn hope. This was Marcus's family now. Not a replacement for what he'd lost, but something new, proof that life could be rebuilt from ruins, that purpose could emerge from pain, that showing up mattered even when you felt like giving up. Later that night, alone in his apartment, Marcus reread his father's letters for the 100th time. The paper was worn soft, the ink fading, but the words remained powerful. "There's always someone who needs you. Promise me you won't disappear." "I kept my promise, Dad," Marcus whispered. "I didn't disappear, and neither did Ethan. Neither did you. We're all still here, in the work, in the kids, in every moment when someone chooses to stay instead of giving up. That's the real legacy. Not the buildings or the programs or the press coverage. Just people choosing to show up for each other. That's enough. That's everything." He placed the letter back in its frame, turned off the lights, and went to bed. Tomorrow there would be more kids who needed him. More grief to witness. More pain to hold. But tonight, for the first time in 7 years, Marcus Chin felt something close to peace. Not the absence of pain, but the ability to carry it without being crushed. Not forgetting, but integrating loss into a life that still held meaning. Ethan was gone. That would never change. But the love remained, transformed into something that healed others. And in healing others, Marcus had finally learned to heal himself. That was the real ending. Not happiness, not closure, just continuation, just choosing every day not to disappear,